Welcome to the Great Distraction.
Welcome back, everyone. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is sexual normalcy. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-hosts Thomas,
How's it going?
Rick,
Welcome to the shit show.
and Glenn.
Hello, folks.
Thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, a little something to ponder. As always, we would love to hear from you guys. Questions, comments, and topic suggestions are always welcome. You can contact us on Facebook or by email at greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com. This is going to be an interesting episode.
Interesting, eh?
We at this point, depending on when you're hearing this, we haven't recorded in a little bit, and I had Rick came out late last night, and we started our how should we say reacquaintance over many drinks.
Make it sound like a booty call.
Whoa!
They had to get lubed up first before they got reacquainted.
It was a social lubricant, man. Yeah, so we're paying.
That's what they say.
I'm paying for that today. As
So you were the bottom?
Yeah, he was Little Spoon.
I was a catcher. Whoa. Actually, that's a great note to start off with to lead us into what I'm about to tell you guys about. So, I have a long-winded introduction into how this topic came to be and the direction that it's hopefully going to take.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. We'll see where
Until
it
you
goes.
invited us over.
That's right. There's going to be a lot of shock factor with what I'm about to describe to you guys.
I'm shocked hearing about last night.
And yeah, it's going to be weird. Just a preemptive, I don't know what I want to say, warning, but just so you know it's coming. This stuff.
What's coming?
Whoa. That's what she's. No. That's not where we're going with this. Just as a precursor warning to this one, ladies, if you're listening, this is some seriously sexist shit. And the stuff that I'm about to describe from this group of people in this culture. I mean, I know this type of stuff existed. I know it's to some degree still exists, but like I was fucking shocked by how sexist these people used to be. So be ready and don't be offended and keep listening because it does have a point in the end.
It isn't our fault. We're just relaying
It's not my fault. Yeah, don't shoot the middleman. Thank you, Thomas. That's exactly what I was going for. Is don't shoot the middleman. All right. I don't feel
Don't
this
kill
way.
the messenger.
That's right. I don't feel this way. Shit just was so I was so awestruck when I heard about it, and then it led to it flowed to the nature of this topic. And I felt it was a story worth talking about and worth mentioning on the episode. It's stuff blew me away. So anyway,
All right, so tell us
yeah,
what you got.
That's right. Without further ado, let me get into it.
Show us what you got.
Show me what you've got. For all the Rick and Morty fans out there, and if you're not, you should be. Let me describe to you, well, first of all, the general theme of the topic, sexual normalcy, is that society, to what effect or to what degree does society define what is sexually normal for us? I'll make that more applicable further after I tell you this story. Let me tell you about, and I'll remind you at the end too, but this stuff is true. It's documented. Even National Geographic did a special on them a long time ago on this tribe that I'm about to describe. I'll give you some information later if you want to do some further research, but it's pretty shocking. This tribe, as I've already precluded to, is called the Sambia tribe, and or the Sambia, whatever. It is and they are a tribe of mountain-dwelling, hunting, and horticultural people that inhabit the fringes of the Eastern Highlands province of Papua New Guinea. I don't know how Papua, New Guinea. And prior to the 1980s, they had a very, very unique traditional process for transitioning boys to men. And that's essentially what...
ABC, BBD.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was writing this. I was like, how can I say this transition without bringing up, without saying Boys to Men? Because when I say Boys to Men, I think of the same fucking thing. Yeah. Right now, Glenn's trying to think of Boys to Men songs.
Oh,
He
no,
remembers.
it's rolling through my head, man. It's-
Right? I was doing the same thing. Anyway, if you're a child of the 90s you remember or 80s because you were a teenager in the 90s, you remember Boys to Men. If you're not, you should look them up because because why not? And that's boys with a Z and two with a 2. Anyway, so to kick it off, young boys in their society are considered and looked at as feminine persons when they begin in life. I suppose that's not too unlike, where people start off in our... I mean, little boys are usually kind of feminine. I mean, they're little kids.
Well, we've already had this conversation about how when you're in the womb and how people develop, and as you mature and move into, just becoming a person, you start to develop your traits, whether men or women traits. So we all know that when children are young, boys cry about everything just like girls cry about everything. We're starting at the same spot.
Right. We're pretty even until we hit puberty.
That's what I was
awesome.
going
That's
for.
exactly what I was going to say too. Is that I think I've always looked at us we're even until puberty. That's why you can have boy or girl friends or whatever that are you can kind of anyway. You guys know what we're talking about. Okay. So, young boys in their society, like I said, are considered feminine, and there is a process, a 6-stage process. Now, I think I wrote down this guy's name, and I'll mention it again in the end. Yeah, I did right here. There was a gentleman who made this tribe most well known because he spent a lot of time with them and wrote a lot about them, and his name was Gilbert Hurt, Herd, I don't know, H-E-R-D-T, Hurt. Anyway, and he did the most amount of documentation on this and learned, there's always somebody who studies various tribes, and same thing with the animal kingdom as well. And so this is the guy who stayed with them the longest, but it has been documented and researched by other people as well. So let me describe to you this 6-stage initiation that these boys go through in order to become men in this culture. And again, this is prior to the 1980s. I don't know how old the tribe was. I couldn't find a date or stated date for how long it existed. But prior to the 80s, they were pretty much untouched by modern times, and that is, and it was actually before that this Gilbert Hurt researched them, or studied them, or whatever. So they hadn't really been exposed to anything, any Western culture or any other culture other than their own. So, process begins. Child comes out, grows to about the age of 6 or 7, and this is boys in particular because they have the more. Interestingly enough, I didn't read anything about what the girls go through. They do have their own rites of a passage that they go through, but it's nothing nearly as. I don't even have the word for that. Anyway, I'll get into it here. At around the age of 7. Young boys are removed from their mothers and inducted into what is considered, for lack of a better term, a men's cult to begin their first stage in the process of becoming a man. And during these first 7 days of this first stage, they're taken to a pool that's alongside of a brook in their village, where a war leader will perform several bloodletting rituals on each of them to cleanse them of any traces of female contamination. And these bloodletting rituals consist of long sticks that they'll jam down their throats to induce vomiting, sharp sticks that are rammed up their noses to cause intense nosebleeds and mucus drainage. And then they make this little, this was actually in the National Geographic documentary, so I actually saw this on video. They will make these little tiny, if you can imagine like a little tiny, maybe 5-inch long bow and a little tiny super, super needle sharp arrow. And they'll prick it, kind of like, they don't shoot the arrow, they just pull the bow back and let it shoot forward.
Like a tattoo gun, maybe?
Yes, like the old school tattoo guns or that dot art where they tap each little dots to make art on a paper. And they will shoot this little tiny arrow repeatedly into their tongues. to make the tongue bleed. And these three methods remove all consumption, smell, and taste of their mother and female contamination that they may have endured in their time before starting this process.
They're 7 years old at this point.
Yeah, they're 7 years old, and they're the brainwashing is amazing. But I don't want to call it that because that's got a bad term to it. The mental conditioning starts at that point, and as I already said, the contamination of female presence is a huge focus on this process, and removing that and the belief that it needs to be removed is a huge portion of this process.
Do the men and women live together in this culture?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
After the ritual, the boys are moved to a camp hours away from their village. Hours walk, obviously not drive. They're not hopping in the Ford Model T.
Put them on the bus.
Yeah, get on the bus. No. So they're moved to away from their village, and they're moved to a smaller camp that has been set up and is used regularly, and has been for many generations or whatever. And in this place, where older men where older men will inform them that they will have to ingest semen called jurungdo of younger bachelors in the group in order to make them grow strong. They believed again. Things have changed now, but up until this point, they believed, among other things, that the semen of a strong warrior or of a strong man, essentially, will make you a strong man and make you a strong warrior and leader. If they do not ingest semen, they will be unable to mature into men, and all men before them have done so similarly to what they're being told. After formal ceremonies of this stage, the remainder of it basically consists of a whole lot of homosexual acts of all kinds. In particular, lots of fellatio, because that is the best way to ingest semen.
The old-fashioned way?
That's the good old-fashioned way,
Straight
right?
from the source.
That's straight from the source. Yeah, so basically, this stage lasts from 7
Maybe they just don't have cups there.
Sure, that's one way of looking at it. This stage lasted from ages 7 to 13. So from the course of 7 to 13, this whole process lasts like a decade. From the course of 7 to 13, they have a lot of sex with roughly around 20-year-old men. They give a lot of blowjobs, and they ingest as much semen as possible in order to grow strong and in order to begin to go through this stage. Basically, that's stage 1, by the way. Stage 2 takes place kind of towards the end of stage 1. And in this stage, they continue to take in as much semen as possible, helping them to become strong, fierce warriors and leaders, right? That's kind of the general theme of it, yeah. But at this point, they are rewarded with feasts and praise and lots of food. Just kind of, from what I was reading, things that kind of make you feel better about the camaraderie and the male bonding that you side of what you've been doing and where you're heading within their culture.
Did they mention if this is kind of like a romantic bonding time?
Actually, as a matter of fact, they did comment on that. So the Hurt and I think the Wikipedia page both mentioned that as they go through this process, the boys tend to what's the word I'm looking for? Lean towards the preference. That's what I was looking for. Preference. They kind of find a preference for different boys, the older boys that they have had interactions with, and they kind of lean towards those ones.
As a mentor, or as like a
partner? I just liked the way you do better, or you taste better, or something along those lines. And they would. That's what there was a comment that they made that they would kind of find their favorites or whatever, and kind of gravitate towards those ones.
Okay.
And he even made a comment that, or a note that it would be to the point where the boys would actively seek out and sexually arouse the ones that they were more comfortable with in public to kind of like I want to be with this person, not the other ones, or this other one, or whatever, kind of like along the line. So there was some sort of and I mean, shit, you got to imagine 7 to 13. These are extremely influential time periods in anybody's life. And if this is the normal that you are exposed to, sure, you're going to accept it as normal, and you're going to have some sort of preference for what is your degree of this situation. So that would make sense that somebody would have preferences and select out different individuals that they liked working with better than others. I don't have the words for describing that, but yes, he did make note that there was some
Bonding, but it's not like a romantic thing, right?
I couldn't tell because he did. I mean, that was the feel that I got. That some. I mean, because that's going to be like an individual basis type thing, right? I mean, some people are going to be. Some 7 to 13-year-olds are going to be like, well, this isn't that bad. I kind of like it. Some are like, I don't like this. I don't like this. But you have to, you have to understand that they don't have a different point of view. Coming from 7 years old, you don't, I mean, think about what you were doing when you were 7 years old. I mean, it wasn't a lot of sex involved in your life or in your mind, maybe, probably for the most part, right? So this is your first sexual exposure. Thoughts, period. I mean, from 7 to 13, shit. That's like all your sexual, beginnings, right? So if you don't feel this is normal, what you're being exposed to, you don't know why it doesn't feel normal. You don't know why you don't like it, or if you don't like it, you don't know you have no frame of reference. You're like a child lost in here, Donnie. You have no frame of reference, So even if they didn't like it,
But then also their cultural development up until this point, and everybody around them has gone through something similar. So this is what is
all the boys in the group, in the tribe, are there with you of the same age, are there with them too, doing the same thing. So when they're the first what I was talking about earlier, the induced vomiting and the nosebleeds and all that kind of stuff, you're looking over at your buddy doing the same thing, or maybe not your buddy, the guy who lives in the hut next to you, or whatever. So I mean, this is normalcy to you at this point.
Was this a secret ritual? Like the women didn't know what was going on?
Yes,
in the
that's
culture?
why they're removed
Yeah.
from the village and taken hours away to this location. Yes, and I'll get into a little more details in that in the end. So we're only. Were you gonna say something? Oh, sorry. We were only going. I thought Tom was going to say something. We were only to stage 3 now. In stage 3, the boys begin to go through puberty because now they're around 13 or so. So they're starting puberty, and they no longer need to ingest semen. They actually become the bachelors, who are the inseminators for the next round of boys in this process. So I think it's from, that's right. I have my notes here. 13 to 16, they become the young bachelors. So now they're still removed from society. They're still in this camp, and they're now the ones inseminating the next round of young boys. They do, however, continue the nose bleedings and add to it whippings against trees. And there wasn't a whole lot about that, but I'm guessing they hugged a tree trunk and got whipped. To remain purified of female contamination. So again, through this whole thing, females are the devil, Bobby Boucher, and you must be purified of that contamination.
Is that because they're receiving contamination from the younger generation that's coming in?
That's kind of the gist I got of it, but it's the best I could sum it up as is this is all part of a long-term conditioning to ensure that this mentality stays. It's like fear-mongering. You have to keep this. You have to keep reminding this individual. Again, this is how you brainwash or condition a mind, right?
Sure.
You have to keep reminding this individual that this is the reason they're doing this, and on top of that, you have to make sure that you instill in their mindset that this is how we look at this certain entity. So in this case, they are bred to always look at girls as bad.
Kind of have like a Pavlovian conditioning here. You're associating pain with
Bingo.
the idea of the maternal part of the tribe.
Bingo. And I'll go further into details on that, but that's exactly what they're doing. Yes. They also, in stage 3, again 13 to 16, begin learning gender roles and how to and the appropriate way to have intercourse. And they are taught that this involves protecting oneself, the boy, from a woman's genital odor. And among other things, which I'll describe here in a couple minutes here, they're taught not to penetrate too deeply because they might get sick from entering a female's urethra. That's actually one of the points that they make. So you don't go any deeper than you need to, boy. Okay, so that stuff continues. That's again age 13 to 16. At the age of 16, in the 4th stage, they are married by a female that is selected for them by, I think if I remember correctly, was the father or their elder brothers select a female for them. Like I said, they had to be at least 16, but they cannot live together, even if wed, until she has had her first period. And this is the first time the boy is exposed to females since the age of 6. So 6 or 7. So roughly a decade, they've been removed from their culture, from their society, and devoid of female contact. Now, the 5th stage takes place after the wife has had her first period. So things are moving a little quicker now. You're not years into the stages anymore. The boy is taught that he has to bleed his nose, again, jamming, they would use sharpened sugarcane sticks. Was what it was. Cane sticks, they called it. I'm imagining that's sugarcane. I don't know of another cane plant. But anyway, they looked to me from the video like little thin things of bamboo, and they would like stack them together like a bundle and literally jam them up their nose. It's pretty brutal. And okay, like I said, he's been told that he has to bleed his own nose before sex and is instructed to, if needs be, use mint leaves in his nostrils during sex and to chew a certain branch to ensure that he will not breathe in any of his wife's genital odor. You like this, Rich?
It's just a little much, but all right.
Right. That's exactly, yes. Now you see why this had such an impact on me.
It's quite a bit of foreplay.
Damn. Yeah, and then after having sex, he must bathe in a bath of mud and bleed his nose again. And he must bleed his nose every time his wife has her period because she pollutes and endangers his life and manhood.
Are they allowed to live together now? Oh, because she already had her first period, so yes. Okay.
So they're living together at this point. Not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not without some sense of logic. He begins to become, they say it's very common, they begin to become very hostile towards the females.
Yeah.
Because in his mind, every time she has a period, which is obviously something she can't help, he has to go out back and bleed his nose and stab himself with a freaking stick because of her period. So obviously in his mind, he's like, damn it, woman. This fucking hurts. I'm tired of doing this shit. So you can imagine how this culture of men looks at the females in their culture, right? Now, she was taught from a very young age to practice fellatio long before they were married or she was assigned a male, and obviously long before she ever had vaginal intercourse. But on top of probably that's built into their society because they don't want to have sex with them, so at least they can do something with them sexually. Both sides are taught that ingesting semen is required by her because, and specifically her husband's semen, because it provides for the child even before she's gotten pregnant by her building up breast milk. This gets better here. Obviously, breast milk, nourishes the child, and if there is you have to keep a steady flow of semen going into her because it is that which makes the baby strong. They believe that breast milk is transformed semen, and that it is the man who indirectly nourishes the child, the baby. This is great, right? This is like, wow. I wish
Who is feeding this young girl semen at this age before she's married?
No. I don't think anybody. I think that she's just being taught that this is what will
okay.
happen, because it's not until she's married that they got standards, Glenn. Come on.
I thought you said they were teaching them there to practice it.
Yeah, I don't. Well, so I didn't read any. So Hurt did not write, and I didn't find anything else written about the female rites of passage. So I don't know. So I'm assuming what you guys are hinting at is like, are these girls being taught to give blowjobs to other guys? I don't know. I didn't read anything about that. But it could also be just instruction that this is what will happen when you get to this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. From what I read, I didn't get the feeling that the girls would have any contact with boys beforehand. That was kind of the feeling I got. And then let me finish the last stage, and I'll mention a little bit more about the mentality of why I think that. But okay, so after over a decade of being isolated from females, we're still in the 5th stage. The boy is now a man in the 5th stage. The 6th and last stage bestows upon him full rights of manhood and is achieved after the first child is born. Once the first child is born, the man is actually instructed to keep away from the child until it is weaned, which apparently in their culture takes a couple years. And he no longer has to bleed his nose unless he takes another wife, and he is told to keep all details of the male cult a secret, lest he be castrated and killed.
Wow.
Damn.
So there's a threat of losing your junk and your life if you tell anyone else about the secret camp.
First rule of Fight Club.
That's right. Damn. Yeah. So if you're interested in more about the Sambia tribe, Google Sambia, Sambia tribe, or Gilbert Hurt, Herdt, and you can read more about that interesting mentality.
What's the tribe called again?
Sambia, Sambia. Yeah. Why did I tell you about this? That was
Because you're going to go camping for a long time.
Want to come with me, Thomas? That was a long-winded introduction to a point that hearing that story made me think about. And I was just like, dude, we got to talk about this. Obviously, I found it shocking, as I'm sure you guys have. It's by our definitions, in our time, in our culture, and in our geographical area, that sounds terrible, and if not horrific, for somebody to go through. However,
just a little abusive.
yeah. Well, okay, yes. However, that's our time, our culture,
Our perspective.
our perspective. That's it. And that's kind of what led me into coming up with this angle of this topic. It's like, holy crap, how much... if you haven't heard, let me see, I wrote it down here. If you haven't heard our episode on how much of you is you, it's episode 30. And we talked about how much of how you feel or what you like or what you dislike or how you live your life is actually your own concoction. Did you actually pick this, or is this what was defined for you by family, religion, culture, society, country, time period, whatever? Did you ever actually have a choice in picking how you are? And when you begin questioning that, that can get down into however granularly you want to break down your life. Sexuality is definitely a piece of that pie chart, and how and what you define sexually, is some of your own design and taste and whatever. But for the most part, you're told, in my point of view, you're told what is acceptable and what is not. Going back to the Sambia tribe boys, maybe I'm going on a stretch here, so this is my personal opinion, but I would claim or state that these boys, for lack of a better terms, by our time period definition, are left essentially sexually dysfunctional. And again, that's my perspective from where I sit now. I say sexually dysfunctional because they're probably at that point, after they're done, after they've passed their 6 stages, not really able to have any sexual pleasure at all. And consider their situation when I say that. They would find themselves as adults in kind of a weird conundrum and kind of a catch-22, damned if you do, damned if you don't. They can't go back to being with the men because they're no longer boys. So if they appreciated that time period in their life and enjoyed that, they can't go back. They're not boys anymore. They hate females because they've been tortured and brainwashed to do so. So they can't find happiness or sexual pleasure from their wife or another wife. And the only thing really left for them to do is either take a new wife and start the process over again. Well, not the whole process, just the last couple of stages. Or join the men's cult as one of the elders who doesn't actually participate, but just facilitates the process of that 6-stage boy to man process.
Did they mention if the men continued these relationships with each other?
They did not. And I think I kind of got, they did not directly. However, I kind of got the feel that, how do I say this? It's kind of, I don't want to say taboo, but it's not cool. Is that the word? It's not cool, dude. It's not cool. Hey, bro. You're not a young boy anymore. You don't get to suck dick anymore. Okay, sorry, man. Or you're not a bachelor anymore. You don't get to molest the little boys. No, that's not cool, man. It's not cool.
That's
it's like
interesting.
Not normal in their society is the feel I got from it anymore.
Because it seems like they're conditioned to enjoy sex with another man.
They're conditioned for a certain time period, though.
Right.
Remember,
but those, like you said, the final stages accelerate really like within a year, right?
to manhood.
So yeah, when they're learning about sexuality, it's only with men, and they're conditioned to believe that women are contaminated. I'm assuming this means they could die if they catch it, right? So to have like a romantic relationship, I would assume that would be kind of hardwired in them to have that with another man. So is it like, yeah, I don't know. We'd have to talk to a real.
I think the key word that you mentioned there was having a romantic relationship. I don't think anything in this process was defined as what you and I would consider romantic. It's kind of forced upon you, and you have no frame of reference for anything different, and then you're yanked out of it and put into a different type of situation completely.
Yeah, it could be my bias, but I think that the romantic relationships are somewhat ingrained in us. It's like a natural, something we want naturally. So I don't know how to say what I'm thinking.
Words.
Are you
Word
thinking
trick.
words?
Yeah.
Use words.
Are you going along the lines of that romance is, this is a totally different angle that we were taking from, but I like it. Are you going along the lines that romance is built into us and kind of like a naturally sought after condition?
Yes. Like that you can have strong relationships with people, but they're very different than the satisfaction that you're trying to get from a romantic partner.
Assuming
right?
that you know what that is. Because remember, romance is a societally defined condition.
Behavior.
Yeah, but I guess my point is that I think a natural emotion, right, that you're trying to satisfy. Like when we were coming of age, we didn't know.
Yeah, but I think that's conditioned. I think that.
No, are you? Oh, I'm sorry.
So I think what you're sort of alluding to is that like this romantic feeling of like, you know, we grew up in a culture where we obviously looked at women different, and there was a romanticizing of becoming a man, of getting the girl and, you know, swooning in and finding the person. This is all an ideology of romance, which is bred into us as a behavioral, cultural thing. So I think that doesn't exist with them. That would be my general frame of thought. But my what I was going to say in a whole different direction of my first view of this whole religion, it's a way of control. It's a form of control, like a religion. So you're conditioning people to behave in a certain way. The whole thing about the 6 to 13, and all, I don't even want to try to even talk about that right now because I'm looking at a bigger picture, and that one just freaks me out. So if you condition people as a culture to behave a certain way, and the way this is a long-winded explanation. When these kids get older and they have their first child and all this stuff, they probably don't. They're not going to whore around. They're not going to cause problems. They're not really going to want to have these distractions in their cultural tribal behavior of going after women or chasing somebody else's husband or wife or all this stuff. I think those things are removed because of the way that they've controlled their identity of being people in the tribe, their placement in the tribe. So it's a form of control. So the elders always have control of all of the younger people. Look how much control they have over them, much like a religion.
That's right. And putting an individual through very traumatic experiences is
Like a religion.
Is very, well, I was thinking like the nosebleeds, the beatings, the stuff like that. You put a human being through traumatic experiences, that's how you break it down and reconstruct it and make it more accepting. Because when you wear out the body and the mind, it becomes...
You can put anything you want in there.
That's exactly.
And that's what religion does. Definitely. It doesn't necessarily do it in a physical, abusive manner.
Has.
It has in the past in several religions, but it's more of a mental conditioning and an isolation.
That's right. Every day, over and over again.
And that's one of the things that struck me in the story is the isolation of this young kid being, weaned from its mother, because when everybody knows when kids are young, dad's kind of useless. Yeah. Especially the first 3 years. Yeah. And so these kids have built this attachment to this person who is their nurturing, life-giving support, and it's the way they yank them away and isolate them like that. That's when, as soon as that part of the story kind of popped in, it reminded me of ancient religion.
Yeah. And also, I forgot to add in there too, when they're not that I wanted to completely just focus on the Sambia tribe, but if any of the boys did try to run or whatever, they would just beat them worse and make an example of them.
Yeah, where would you run to?
There's no way to run.
You don't even know there's another world, and that's why when we were talking earlier, when Rick was bringing up the thing about the romanticizing and stuff, I'm like, I feel like after you've been sort of like abused and conditioned for that decade, you're not going to think anything that's not told to you to think. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, that goes back to my thought about the control. The elders control the younger people forever. They always have control of them because they've shaped their entire identity of life. Mm-hmm. And so they're not going to question anything. They might have thoughts outside of this. Everybody does. But I don't think that they're going to really question anything or make any sort of move to it because that's not proper behavior. You know what I mean?
And it'll get you killed.
And it'll get you killed. Castrated and then killed.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I did not have an end game like most of these topics that we talk about. There's no end game or point to be made in particular. It's merely something to discuss as an interesting point of angle, right? And you got to... You're going to say something? Go ahead.
Just a question. With this relation of how this conditions, or how these people were conditioned, what sort of sexual conditionings do we have on us?
Exactly it. That's exactly the question I wanted to ask.
Well, it's definitely cultural.
Sure.
Yeah. We're told what is okay and what is not. And though our culture is thankfully changing of late, prior to in the past decades or whatever, homosexuality was, completely illegal. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little more liberal and open-minded in my thinking because I'm a Californian, right? But I can't imagine that. I was watching
Imitation Game?
No, not
VR porn.
That's a shut up. No, what movie was it? Damn.
The Danish Girl?
That's VR porn.
Shut up. No, Downton Abbey. Not that any of you guys watch that; it doesn't matter. But it took place in Europe, and there was a couple of scenes. One of the main characters is gay, a male, and he. I didn't realize that it was actually illegal there. Like they
Where?
would in
England.
in most of Europe.
Oh yeah.
But
it's damn near illegal in Russia right now.
dude,
I think didn't they throw that girl punk rock band in prison for being
that was
lesbians? Or was that a political thing?
That was more of a political thing.
So I realize I'm an ignorant Californian from America, but holy crap, that blew me away that it was actually a legal law that you could not be gay.
And where?
I didn't know that.
Where?
So this was in Europe.
Where in Europe though?
I can't remember where Downton Abbey takes place, and outside of London.
Probably,
it's like in the
probably,
outskirts
okay,
or-
all right.
But I mean, it was the whole town, and they would go in, and they would have.
Well, there's a huge difference between like British people and Turkish
understand.
people.
I understand. So yeah, don't quote me on that or whatever. But I did a little research after I heard about it. I was like, wait, is that true? You know, so I looked up. I was like, holy crap! I didn't realize that there were actually laws in some places of the world that.
Well,
that banned
if you look at like homosexuality as a behavior, sexual behavior, throughout time, it's always been there, and I would say it was probably maybe more than it is now. For a large portion of things,
In some
look at the
areas,
Romans.
yes.
the restriction
Romans
has always
and the
been
Greeks,
but the restriction has always been the church.
Oh, yes.
on
Well,
behavior of
yeah.
that, because if you go back to animalistic and you know cavemen,
Well,
I mean,
okay, so to
They
be
had
fair,
their own
to be-
religion
they
too.
had,
To be
well,
fair
they
to
but
that,
they had
though-
their own behaviors and they had their own sexual behaviors.
To be fair to that, do we know, and I mean at this table, or if you guys have read, if any of the polytheistic religions, what was their take on homosexuality? I don't
Absolutely.
know.
I think it was banned because it was. I mean,
Even the pagan and their time
I don't
period?
think the
know.
pagans were. No,
Well, that's
it
what I'm
was
saying,
more of a Christian
polytheistic.
thing. Well, yeah, but not all polytheistic religions have the same opinions.
No, of course. That's what I'm saying. Like as a whole, prior to monotheistic Christianity and
Got it.
those types or whatever,
Got it.
how did they look at homosexuality?
I don't
I don't
that's,
know.
That's what
There's
I'm
not a whole lot of information available.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought. It's like nobody documented that kind of stuff, so we don't really know how they looked
So
at
it'd just be an opinion.
It was well
And so it
documented
might not have been just religion, is my point.
in ancient Greece and Rome.
Right. They were polytheistic.
They were polytheistic and orgies and
homosexuality was not a bad thing.
It was
not a bad thing.
No,
That's
it was
what I
actually
heard.
pretty commonly practiced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even by
you see it in their
royalty
art.
leadership.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all over in their art, so it's
Yeah.
like well documented that was okay in their culture.
So so that's one particular geographical area. I don't know. I mean, I know the Irish were polytheistic. I mean, a lot of cultures were.
Yeah.
I don't know how they looked at what did the Vikings think about it?
Well,
You know,
I
it's
mean,
like-
so and that one I can't answer that. But
I know, yeah.
but if you talk about the basics between like the Romans and the Christians, because you're talking Catholic and Christian, you're talking Eastern Europe.
for the last
and
2,000
Brit-
years.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So these are the two main powerhouses of religion that became most of modern religion now.
Yeah.
So if you go back in Roman times, or back like we were saying, I don't know, he mentioned about the orgies and everything else. Sexuality was very open. It was, I mean, yeah, you had warriors and you had kings and things like this, but it was common behavior that the orgy is a Roman thing.
Yeah.
You know, the Christians are more the Puritan style of people who was the man and wife, and it's a man married to a woman, and that's where those sort of like rules and regulations came through. So you have to remember, any time in history that has happened that has been powered by one of these religions, those behaviors have been pushed into that culture. That's who was in charge.
And that's
We're
great-
telling you what to do.
Yeah, that's a great example of something to question. Actually didn't even think of that. The whole concept of an orgy. Why is it that? And again, not that I'm promoting that stuff, but that's a great question. Why isn't that? I mean, you hang out with your friends. You guys, you'll have drinks. You'll get fucking inebriated, and some people will. Whatever your conditions are, you'll hang out together and you'll do all kinds of stuff together. Why don't people combine sex like that in a group? Why isn't that more normal?
Well, people do.
I mean,
but
and
it's
they
not
do,
as-
but why
it's-
isn't it more normal in our society? It's something to question.
I think that goes back to the religious.
Absolutely, but as far as the listeners go, it's like that's something you should question in your life. Not saying that you should go out and participate in an orgy, because the way we've been
But hey,
brainwashed,
we're not going to stop you.
Yeah, the way we've been brainwashed, it probably won't sit well with you afterwards. But nevertheless, you should
Kinda like the
question.
threesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you recall Thomas's stories on how that worked out, that's something.
Not very well.
That's something you should question. Is why am I not okay with that? Personally, I'm not okay with that concept. That's weird to me, and I don't think I could do
and
that.
that goes back to this control that people have had, just like this tribe. They're controlling the behavior of their future generations.
That's right.
That's why I keep saying it's more like a religion. Whatever their practices are that lead that path or do what we would consider in our culture today brainwashing, but that doesn't mean that's what it was to them. Maybe before this happened, their culture was struggling so bad that they had to come up with some sort of commandments or rules to curb some sort of behavior to take them from what they whatever they are at that point, that's their modern existence of their tribe or their evolution of a society. That's modern. Now is always modern. So there was a history before that. So a lot of these tribes have developed behavior and relationships based on what they were trying to either fix, change, or a direction that somebody had an idea, like a dictator or a leader or a pope.
Let me play
Or
off
even
of
trying
that.
to just explain why things are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a common thread that in older undeveloped tribes that they would kind of like exile women during their period. It's probably because they didn't understand, why is she bleeding?
Exactly. They didn't
I
understand.
don't want this. You got to get out of the house.
Yeah. So at some point, somebody developed an idea or a thought or a behavior for this thing that's going to happen. We all know this.
That's a really great angle to play off of too. I've often thought about that with Catholicism and it having so many issues with the clergy molesting little boys. People don't realize or accept openly that things can be created in this world based on the smallest little start of something. And to that, I give the example of CDC, Center for Disease Control. Somebody comes in one day with some statistics. Maybe they're a supervisor, maybe they're a little higher up, and they're like, whoa, we have an epidemic. We need to do something about this. And they present this to the higher up, and the higher up, another higher up, and says another higher up, and they say, yeah, you're absolutely right. You are now the supervisor of this branch. Put together a team. Let's take care of it. The next thing you know, we have a bird flu epidemic. And this person got promoted off of creating what really wasn't a problem, but convincing the powers that be and the ones that claim it's an epidemic. Now they have an entire promotion, an entire branch. Their career has been made off
pamphlets.
of that. Yeah, whatever. Exactly. Pictures and posters and all that shit. I've often wondered this about Catholicism, or maybe even any religion. What if an entire... Because again, you don't know what that will spiral into once it's been created. It's a snowball effect. Once starts rolling down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger and more powerful and bigger and bigger and bigger. What if a religion was based on or started from one or a group of men's desire to have sex with young boys?
I'm sure it was.
That would not at all be the first time an organization NAMBLA, has been put together in order to appease or appeal to the sexual nature of a group of people. An entire religion could have been based on hiding the desire for pedophilia.
Well, I think
that's not impossible at all.
I think it's absolutely feasible, and I think it's happened.
Yeah.
A lot of religions, and so let's go back into like tribes of early human development. So you have tribes that, as we were talking before, develop a behavior. This tribe that you're talking about, that the story was about, is
Sambia.
The Sambia tribe is a tribe just like any other tribe in the time frame of the existence of humans on Earth. So behavior has been developed by whatever happened in that region. If in 4000 BC there was a tribe that felt that you had to rape the baby after it was born to give it some sort of life for some reason, or some god or some deity or some cloud that showed up that they didn't understand because they had an IQ of a 6-month-old person as an adult, then things can happen. So as those develop, those turn into cultures. An activity that happens over and over and over becomes part of a culture.
Well, so, okay, take one step back, though. I wanted to, and when I was writing my notes for the Sambia tribe, I wanted to make comments like, obviously these people didn't know any better, or obviously they weren't educated, or obviously this is old term.
But you don't know that.
But here's the thing, when I thought about it further, I don't think that matters at all. Because people will believe what society and
That's what
culture
I'm saying.
pushes them. So it's not an IQ thing. It has nothing to do with intelligence. Has nothing to do with available information. Has nothing to do with modernization. It has to do with what you can convince people to accept.
And why would you convince people of something?
To control them.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So this is definitely a method of control. Yeah, sorry, go on. to whose gain or for what gain, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, you can make any assumption you
Yeah.
want because you can say anything, and
It could have been
it's
because
up to some psycho to prove you wrong.
yeah, it could have been because the leader of the tribe in the very beginning that started this really wanted to fuck little boys. So he's like,
That's what I'm
shit, I'm going to
saying.
make this the rite of passage.
That's what
which
I'm
is
saying.
the angle I was taking with Catholicism or some religion.
Yeah. And I think a lot of religions are based on crazy behavior and weird things that happen. I mean, if you
big time.
if you know much about like really old history and the beginning origins of religion and stuff, we have to remember we're at a time when few people have intellectual ability to really structure any sort of a life. Most people are tribes that are surviving hand to fist. They're killing, they're eating,
You need
they're
help from
shitting,
the
they're
group.
sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah.
So during those developments, there was spawns just like the pagan thing too. There was lots of small groups of little religions where somebody had a little bit of an idea or somebody was able to control somebody somehow. And we're talking from 21st century, so we can't even really replicate the thought pattern
Yeah.
that would have gone on there.
Not
One
even
person
close.
might have been the only guy who could make fire.
Yeah.
Or the only person who could weave something for shelter.
Yep.
And that person gained a following. And these people went to them because sheeple have always been sheeple and there have always been people in charge. So any of these religions, these tribes, they all spawn from either an event where somebody was looked at as a god or a deity or in charge, and then things went from there. So that person could have been anybody. They could have been a total pedophile. They could have been somebody who was totally into bestiality and not even known that because this was 4000 BC.
Yeah. Shit, it could be today.
Well, it could be today, but I mean, you look at the origins of all of our cultures. We started as really uneducated creatures that were just fucking and eating.
Yeah.
So the movement forward, I'm amazed we're this far.
Well, above all else, we won't die. That's the thing. Life will find a way.
But there had to be a way of figuring that out because if you look at early tribes and people probably didn't live to be 16, 17 years old for a long time. So these little educations of somebody learning how to do something or learn to be smarter, someone told me a long time ago, getting old is a privilege. And I was like, I don't see it as a privilege. But it was like,
Me neither,
well,
but yeah, I get what you're saying.
But the gift that you get from getting older is, of course, knowledge and learning things. And you're going to look back and go, fuck, I wish I knew that in my 20s. So you're just going to be full of regret. But in the early stages of this, that's why all old people are mean and eat evil. They finally figured it out, and they got 6 months to live.
But somebody, people, so live accordingly.
But somebody figured something out and got to move forward with an idea or whatever, and then 4 generations later or 100 years later of that tribe, 2 people started communicating in some way, and they were 2 guys, and they started having sex, and that was just the normal thing. Yeah. So the behaviors of anything, it's hard to type down the origin of it, and for us as modern people in the 21st century to look back and really judge that is actually kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Because we're saying something about something we know nothing about and we have no control over.
That's right. That was part of the reason I brought up the whole Sembiad tribe in the first place, because you think that's crazy. Wow, that's horrific. Wow.
Who gives you the authority to say that?
What we're doing right now will be looked at as freaking crazy 100 years from now, whatever.
So my question, is it wrong to make a little boy suck your dick?
That depends, right and wrong. So now we've talked about this
right,
before.
right,
in
right,
America
Ethics
right
and moral.
now, no.
That's right.
That's
In our
not
time,
okay.
what?
That's not okay.
In our time period right now, it is not.
In this jurisdiction.
In this, yeah, that's right. But
Absolutely. But in that tribe's area, it is
perfectly normal.
perfectly
That's
normal.
how
And
you make a
okay.
man.
And see, that's another thing that's kind of crazy too. If you look at the progression of Earth, like look at America. At some point, people were just living here and being free, and then these other people came in and said, "Oh, we'll take this and make rules." Well, that happens everywhere, all over the world. There can never be an untouched place in the world because there will be an explorer from some fucking culture,
An exploiter?
an exploiter who will come from some government and take over. So at some point, when I think about these tribes and stuff, is there going to be some sort of African community that moves into that area and says, well, we're taking this over now, and now it's under just like British control was or colonial control? for
Right.
this and now this
so
is
what
illegal
was okay and proper is now wrong.
Yeah, forget all that, buddy.
and
Forget all
illegal.
that.
So
and so
what
we're going to
is
send in
right
somebody to
or
enforce
wrong?
that.
Nothing. And that's, we have a whole episode dedicated to morality and ethics. If you haven't heard that one, I can't remember the number, but if you search for it,
Yeah.
we basically discussed there is no such thing as right or wrong.
Right.
It's just defined by your society, time, culture, era, geographical location, whatever. It's all those things.
What boundaries were put on you?
That's it. Yeah. Who's in control and what do they like?
And
right?
what boundaries do you recognize? Because in say this house, for instance, there's no overarching control aside from what we engage in.
Alcohol control.
We acknowledge that we are part
for Ben.
of, the United States, and we recognize and respect those laws.
Yeah.
And so
Most of
we
them.
will mostly.
No, but you're right. In this house, I'm not going to stop you guys from doing anything fucking crazy unless it's going to burn down my house. Or
Right.
fucking,
So it's Ben's law here that actually matters.
Whoa. Well, I was going to go that angle, but I was going to say you guys are crazy.
And
you
it's
guys are
pretty
free to do
laxed.
Right.
whatever
but
you want to do.
as long as, the only law that exists here is what we recognize, or what
Yeah,
is
exactly.
being
But it's what we recognize, and that was something I thought about when you're telling the story. I was just like, man, as the modernization of the world and all land will be owned by some entity at some point. There will not be any just random space on Earth.
Nope.
Somebody's going to be in charge of that or take ownership of it.
or claim to be.
Or claim to be, which is all we can really do.
Yep.
But so is that government going to come in and look at this tribe and go, oh no, we're pulling all of you
Something
guys
wrong.
out? Yeah,
You don't do this no more.
and is that fair to them?
Yeah, that's the other thing is why stop? Well, then now you go back to the religious thing because that's all religions have done since the dawn of since their existence.
But people
They
who
come
want to
in-
be a Mormon, it's not up to somebody else to say, well, I don't like that religion. The Puritans tried that with everybody for centuries,
so
but you can't. But into modern day, you can't go up to somebody and go, your belief is against mine. I don't want it's illegal now.
Yeah,
Didn't we have like crusades and shit?
See, that's what I was going after. So the Mormons are the
But that's how they gained power and
Yes.
followers.
Yes, but it was also it was a religious war. I mean,
yes.
Yeah,
And
well, they
then-
were expanding.
That's why I don't like using LDS as an example because they're kind of like they're a totally different type of religion. We don't really have many religions like them.
What
because
religion is?
LDS is Mormon,
okay,
Latter-day
yeah.
Saints. That's what they call themselves. LDS.
Yeah.
Not I don't. We call them Mormon, but
Yeah, we call them other things.
yeah, well, whatever. But they're different because they did not get their existence by killing and slaughtering and stealing and forcing themselves onto by other entities, right? They didn't have the Crusades. They're too new and they're birthed from America. That's a totally different boutique religion that is gained success, kind of like Scientology along those lines, right? It's a boutique religion based on Christianity. But going off of what Glenn was saying, yeah, most religions have gotten their power by coming in and saying, this is our God, this is now your God, or you die.
Yeah,
and we're going to rape your women
absolutely.
anyway, and we're
Absolutely.
going to steal your food. So that's a whole lot different than...
A government coming in.
Yeah, it's more like that than LDS. I just wanted to say that's why I wanted to emphasize on the LDS thing because those guys are different.
They're different, all right.
Nevertheless, yeah, weird religious, nevertheless, but they didn't get their power by forcibly taking.
A lot of religions didn't, though.
That's true.
Only the beginning ones did, like the Romans, the Catholics and the Romans. Basically,
Pretty much
the same
everything
thing.
since then, right? Well,
Before that,
you're
because that's the
don't forget-
establishing of like Egypt and all of that
Yeah,
shit
don't forget
too.
Islam. There was forced lots of wars. Islam, Muslims are the same.
And it
thing
was
as
all about
Christians.
territory.
Yeah, basically, and power.
Yeah, the more territory you have, the more power you have. It reached out, just like the Christian Crusades, they were to spread the word. Yeah. Well, they were just to get more followers, so they could
kill a
have
lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, force
Well,
a
they
lot of
just
people.
wanted to be bigger and more powerful,
Yeah,
and if you
that's
have more followers,
That's the spreading the word. That's your mission, right?
right? Yeah.
Indigenous North American tribes would do that. They would kind of take each
Absolutely.
other by force.
Yeah.
Like
It's
I
a
think
humanistic. It's a
It's
human thing.
an
territorial.
evolutionary thing about people becoming in power. You can't take power from people. You can't just walk in and be like, "You're not in charge anymore," and people are going, "Oh, okay, sure, here's the keys."
Got to kill somebody.
You got to kill people.
I don't like the way you think. You kill me.
it took kind of a wild turn from little boys getting diddled and bloody noses to
I know, man, and that was why I said in the middle of this, like I didn't have an
Direction,
in-game
yeah.
direction for this. I just wanted to present the situation
Yeah.
and the idea and the concept, and where the hell we took it from there was,
Well, going back to that though, and some of the ritual things, I think of those rituals are just like any other religion. Again, have to tie this back to a religion.
It's very much the same as far as the brainwashing goes. It's,
yeah,
it's
but
the same methodology.
But these what they would consider a celebration or a movement from one age to the other, all these like rituals, they had to be spawned from something else, little things that happened that they just took in, because most religions will take little things that they do as part of their overall identity from other stuff.
Or for the betterment of the community. So I've often wondered, so I know that like for example, pork meat, something about a bacteria something about a bacteria that grows quicker in pork meat, can make people sick. Well, if you go back hundreds of years, how do you stop people from getting sick to save them? They go to the leader, hey, leader, we're all getting sick. Or what do we do? What do we do?
Don't eat the swine. It's
the
unclean.
Swine is dirty.
Yeah.
Don't eat the swine. It's bad for you. Okay, our God says don't eat it, and our leader says don't eat it. We don't eat the swine. It's dirty. All of a sudden, now you have a cult culture that has removed something that used to make them sick, and that was why it was removed. Nothing wrong.
But it's got electrolytes.
Yeah, Scott's what plants need. There's nothing wrong with the meat. It's just at the time they didn't know any other better way to keep the society
Another thing
alive.
too you have to remember too is during courses of evolution of humans, we've learned things by fucking up. Like how to cook, how to handle certain products like meat versus cow versus chicken, all these different things. So to me, that falls into an event that happened, much like these other activities of this tribe. Some sort of an event happened where they just, it was life-changing to them or to somebody who was alive at that point, and they brought it forward, and maybe they turned it into a version of theirs, just like the Mormons. He created a version because something happened to him. Yeah. See what I'm going?
And one question that you had asked earlier, is it right for someone else to come in and change their opinion of how they do things, right?
They're not killing each other.
Right.
Even if they were.
But
even if they were, exactly. Whose jurisdiction?
Human sacrifice has been
Yeah.
a thing in
Yeah.
many, many religions and many, many cultures.
But under our cultural boundaries currently, could you imagine being this observer hurt?
Yeah, Gilbert Hurt.
Gilby.
And watch them take 7-year-old boys and ram sticks in their nose until they bleed and then get blown by them and stuff like that without being like fucked up by it.
The first thing that would
or
pop,
prevent them from doing
The
it.
first thing that would pop in my head is, holy shit, they're not going to make me do that, are they?
Well,
That would have been the first thought of mine. I would have been like, how the fuck are we going to save these boys? Because our
Really?
cultural boundaries are to protect
that's the
the
difference
children.
between Ben and Rick.
I would have no problem observing what they're doing, but as long as they don't make me, as long as they don't make me do that. Well,
Ben's down to watch.
Shut up.
do I paint the penis too?
You guys are dicks. Like, I'm pretty removed from humanity was my point in the beginning to the forefront. But
Do you think you wouldn't be? Do you think you wouldn't be disturbed watching someone what we would consider abusing a child like that?
No. not under
Again, as
cultural-
long as he doesn't have to do it.
So
No,
if you,
so I
if you
could take
go
that-
into it with a recognition that it is a cultural practice and you're observing an outside society, I could see the detachment.
What bothers-
now, if I were to, just wander into something like this, oh, fuck no.
Yeah, that's different. If I saw somebody here in our culture this time period doing that shit to a kid, that's a whole different story. That I'd have a fucking problem
That's
with.
part of their culture, though.
Yeah.
Just because they live
No,
here.
I'm talking here.
Yeah.
I
in
see
your
what you're
house
saying.
or across the street.
I see
But
what you're saying.
if they're in America and we recognize that America has laws and what I was talking about, how we recognize that we are in this country, in this
Bingo.
house.
Yes.
So we are upholding the laws, even though that nobody is here enforcing them.
That's right. If I saw that shit here, that'd be a different story. I would not stand for it. I wouldn't allow it. I would call the authorities. You need to stop this shit. I don't care where you come from. You're not there anymore.
Yeah.
If I go there, not necessarily when in Rome, do as the Romans, but when in Rome, let them
fuck,
do
this
their
is-
shit. That's
yeah.
their stuff, dude. I'm not going to mess with that. Damn, that was another point I was going to make about the kid. I get what you're saying, but again, you have to be careful because I see all kinds of things every day of my life, especially being in a Christian society. Every day of my life, I don't agree with. I sit there and watch it and don't do anything about it. What am I going to do? That's what they do.
But we're also culturally conditioned that that's within the boundaries of normal behavior.
Fine, but if they
Even
step,
if you don't agree with it, you know that it's acceptable here.
Yeah.
sure, exactly. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, well, that's exactly what Thomas said. I don't agree with it. I still watch it. I let it happen. It would be the same circumstance, there as well. It's just, yeah.
So then, I don't know, we believe in a freedom of religion and freedom of practice. So what happens if that tribe were to relocate to some place like the United States?
That's
we
where I was
have these
going.
rules?
Yeah.
Okay, well then you experience the hypocrisy of America. Because it's,
where do you draw the line?
That's the hypocrisy of America, right?
Yeah.
It's you have freedom to do what you will as long as you will what we tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you don't have freedom, motherfucker. There is no real
I mean,
freedom.
you have religious freedom in America, but murder is still murder.
Yeah, sure, yes.
So, I mean, if you're breaking it into a law and back again to a jurisdiction because now this is taking place somewhere else, I'm with you. If the tribe just decided, oh, we can't live here anymore, Florida looks cool.
Yeah, sorry, you can't bring your stuff here. It's just we
Yeah.
have our own culture. Similarly, we
But
don't,
that's going on in cultures here now. You know, just like people who want to have Syria law in America. These things are happening all over the world, and people trying to push boundaries.
What's that?
Sharia law,
What's that?
the super strict Islamic rule, like where the women have to be covered up and stuff like that, and beating and rape is part of it.
Yeah, there's lots of
I mean, not
communities in the United States where they're. Anytime you look at history again, you look at the Chinese. When the Chinese they brought their culture there and they brought their stuff to the city.
They brought what they knew.
They brought what they do. All cultures do. That's going on now in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And people are pushing boundaries,
Yeah.
and that's one that's happening in America
And in
So-
Europe.
Yeah, when you go to Europe, man, it's odd. There's some places where you can tell like, wow, there's a lot of Muslim here, and other places you're like, it just seems like a totally different world. I don't know, it's like culturally wise, it's a strange thing. But I think that's getting pushed all the time. But if we go back into whatever the community's law, whatever we recognize as the law here, we recognize that murder is illegal. We recognize that being a pedophile is bad and it's a punishable offense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have these boundaries of our law, which is our governing body, which supersedes our religious beliefs because we're still in their jurisdiction.
There you go. And come full circle now. Those are the things I'm questioning with this topic. Pedophilia is wrong. Says who?
Depends on where you're at.
That's right. Murdering is wrong. Says who?
Depends on where you're at.
I mean, we used to
that's more
sacrifice-
circumstantial, I think, especially today. I mean, it is not illegal necessarily to kill somebody.
Oh, only if it's for God or country.
But there are parts in the world where I could just shoot you because we're in an argument and nobody would care.
That's true.
It may be or may not be legal, but no one would do anything about it.
That's true.
Correct.
You know,
Like
and
you go to
Depends on
Somalia and you have an argument with somebody in a bar, I'm sure you could get shot.
that's how they work shit out. Yeah,
Exactly.
in their culture.
Yeah.
Oh, it used to be that way here.
Just do a
It
couple-
used to be that way here. I mean, it not even. I mean, in going back in history and behavior of things, we can go in 100 different directions. But 150 years ago, let's say right where we're standing right now, 150 years ago, if you shot Ben and somebody rolled up and said, "Well, I'm the sheriff around here," he said, "Well, he
cheated in a card game.
Yeah, he cheated in a card game.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, like, well, you can bury him over there.
Yeah.
That's what would happen.
Yeah, fair fight.
Right? Yeah, for a long time, the recognition of those sort of offenses had a different boundary as well.
Yeah.
Like in American culture, you could get shot over a car or cheating over a card game
right.
and be found innocent.
Yeah.
That actually was a thing. So again, it goes into like where you're at, kind of. Yeah.
So what about outside of our species here? When we're on the subject of
Species?
weird sexual boundaries,
I don't know what aliens do.
bestiality, right?
Oh, it's out of our species. Well, again, that's defined. That's another societally defined normalcy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like in our society, you're not supposed to have sex with animals. As a matter of fact, there is laws against
laws
that, right?
against it.
And it's taboo.
In every
As
state.
I understand it, in Washington, they have laws where it's okay.
Yeah. So, again, that's just why the fuck is it wrong?
That's what I was
If you're
getting
not-
at.
I
Where
mean-
do we draw? Where is the line drawn?
I mean,
mean,
we go back to the right and wrong. There is no such thing as
Yeah.
right and wrong. So anything's okay. I guess if it's hurting the animal, maybe that's where you draw the line because you're like, I don't think you should be hurting the animal.
Yeah.
But if it's not hurting the animal, what the fuck difference does it make?
Well, I think one of the pushes for against bestiality is obviously it's probably going to be very painful for an animal.
Maybe.
Second
Depends on
thing
what
is,
animal.
But the second thing is disease.
So maybe they made it illegal, like I was talking about earlier with the pork, right? Maybe
There have been a lot of things throughout again human history where someone's come in, like I said before, with that prime situation and said, "Don't do this anymore."
Mm-hmm.
And if you have enough control, you can say, "Well, we'll pass a law," and now anybody in our jurisdiction has to follow this law.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we are over our hour here, trying to keep it around that level.
We don't want to talk about donkey shows.
Because we're moving into bestiality. Check it out.
Mutton.
We found what the line is in Ben's kingdom.
Shutting you guys down. You're getting dirty.
But this is only
Dirty
drink
deeds
1 for Ben,
done
so
with
it could change.
Drink 2. Yeah, I'm drinking it.
Drink 5.
What the hell? What is it like? Oh, shit! It's afternoon now. Well, okay. So I'm
Well, you did start drinking before noon.
I'm justified now. Hey, hair of the dog, man. The best way out of a hangover is back into a
I
drink.
was supporting it the whole time.
You don't have to justify yourself. You're in
I
a
was going to
safe
drink
space
with you.
here.
I didn't want you to feel
It's
alone.
culturally
I'm
acceptable to
among
drink
friends.
before
There
noon.
you go. I'm among friends.
I don't want my friends to drink alone at 11. Pour me a fucking drink.
All right, there you go. So take with it from this episode, question what you feel is okay sexually and why do you feel it's okay. It's a weird thing to think about. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way you think about it, but nevertheless, it's an interesting conundrum to
It's all
contemplate.
okay, man.
It's
Just go with it.
Just go with it. Another Rick and Morty reference, yes. Just go with the flow, man. All right, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.